Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Your Overseas Home, our Golden Three webinar, all about buying a property in Spain with your three special experts who will make it happen for you, or at least help you make it happen. My name is Christopher Nye, and I'm Senior Editor at Your Overseas Home and Spain Property Guides. We've been helping people relocate and buy abroad for pretty much 20 years now. Via our online guides, inspirational, hopefully newsletters and property mailers. And also by connecting you directly with trusted experts to support you with your purchase. So it's great to have you with us today, whether you're with us live or catching up on demand. Our goal always is to help you buy safely and securely in Spain. And hence I'm joined by three property experts who will share their knowledge and advice on buying in Spain, and we're going to look at it right from the start, first plans to getting those keys in your hand. So we're going to be joined by Danny, a trader at Smart Currency Exchange, David Bryant from Hot Properties España, and Emma Belgum from JLCA Lawyers. Before we get started with the questions, let's just have a quick hello from each. And a quick sort of overview of their services and how they can help you buy in Spain. So firstly, Danny Cook, tell us about yourself and Smart.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Danny Cook. So I work as an account manager on the trading desk at Smart Currency Exchange. I've worked here for around 4 years now. Here at Smart, we've been around since 2004. We've helped around 50,000 people in that time move currency overseas. Specifically for property purchases or relocations. This is kind of the main type of transaction that we specialize in. What we really aim to do for our clients is to help them manage their budgets when buying a property overseas. So of course, currency markets can be, a very volatile place. Just going to use sort of an example of what we've seen really over the past 3 months to sort of illustrate that. So generally, when you're buying in Spain, you can be looking at a sort of 2 to 3 month window between offer accepted and completion. So just looking at the past 3 months, we've seen a high for sterling euro of about 117.70 and a low of about 114.70. So that's about a 3% swing. Now, if you're working with a budget of £200,000, for example, that 3% swing could make a difference of £6,000 to you in terms of your sterling budget. So you can be in a position where you've had an offer accepted on a property, you think it's currently costing you X amount in pounds, and then all of a sudden the markets can swing against you. That price can increase by £6,000. Just due to a currency exchange fluctuation. So what we essentially aim to do at Smart is create a tailored plan for our clients to help manage that risk. There's different products and options available to you as a client. And in order to do that, you'll be assigned essentially a direct account manager who you will liaise with on all transactions and requirements over the weeks and months that you deal with us. And that's the main aim of the service really, is to help all clients who are buying property overseas manage the risk that they will be exposed in the currency markets. Yeah, that's pretty much a brief overview there.
Great. Yep. Okay. Very interesting. I don't think people quite realise the implications of changing exchange rates when they go and see an estate agent and first look at properties. So David, tell us all about yourself and Hot Properties España.
Afternoon, Chris. Afternoon, everyone. Yes, Hot Properties España. We're a small family agency, but we like to believe that also being property finders, that we can help clients find the right location as well as the right property, because often people think, oh, I'm looking for a bungalow or an apartment somewhere along the coast, but because of our localized knowledge, we'll know certain areas won't suit them because of their lifestyle that they're looking for. So we like to believe that we can find the right place and then the right property. So location is always important. We don't want people living somewhere and 18 months later saying, actually, we don't like this location at all. So, we believe that's the most important part of looking for a property in Spain is getting the right place. Everybody wants to be by the sea. Well, not everybody, but most people do. But it's not always the best way to be because of the huge on costs of being close to the Med. So, we like to advise people 5 minutes by car or 5 minutes on the bus is just as good as being 100 meters away from the sea in practical terms. And it saves, quite a few pennies by doing that as well.
Absolutely. I'm always struck with when I have anything to do with Spanish estate agents or estate agents in Spain, that it's not like in the UK where you just buy the property. You're much more involved in the moving out there and finding the right place, and it's much more of a sort of holistic service.
Yes, absolutely, Chris. You're quite right. I mean, we don't just, shove properties down people's throats. It's more about finding the right lifestyle for them. And of course, as Emma will tell us, that's all involved with, getting the right visas and, having the right removal companies, having the right schools in some situations. It's basically you're moving people's whole lives and functionalities to a different country. And most of the time they're very frightened because it's all new and it's, they feel like fish out of water. So we try and take that trauma and that stress out of their lives by smoothing those bumps out and making it as easy as possible for them.
Excellent. Okay, so Emma, tell us all about yourself and JLCA.
Thanks, Chris. Well, as I say, my name is Emma Belgum. I work for JLCA Lawyers. We are a Spanish legal firm. We've been operating for over 25 years. We're based in Spain. We are specifically Spanish solicitors, and we deal with Spanish jurisdiction. But that's not only extrajudicial work, such as obviously purchasing property, inheritances, contracts, and so on. We also have full civil and criminal departments as well, so we're able to cover everything that somebody might need. Obviously, the most important thing for most people is all about buying in Spain and also the different residency options, which is why we like to make sure that people are really clear about why they're buying in Spain, what they're intending to do when they're buying in Spain, so that we can tie in all of the other parts that are important. Because depending on the type of residency, then you have to take planning of applying for that in the country of origin beforehand to build it into your timeline. Or if you're looking at buying a property for investment and you're thinking of renting it, to have the ideas about getting tourist license and everything all ready. So the whole idea of what we do is to make sure, first of all, that you're covered in every way legally. You are the most important person in any transaction, and also to make sure that you're crystal clear about everything, explaining it in a way that you understand. This is the reason for having people like myself, native speakers for various different languages, so that we can not just translate information, that we can actually interpret it so that you've got a clear understanding all the way through.
Okay, fantastic. Well, now we're all on first name terms. Let's get into some questions. Now, if you have any questions at home, please throw them into the questions tab on the right of your screen, and we will get as many answers as possible. There's no wrong questions, so please do ask away. But I'll kick off, and we're going to start. We're going to follow a sort of the process that you might go through if you were buying a property. So I guess that's going to start off with your budget. Hence, we're going to go to Danny. So Danny, tell me about. Just give me sort of a quick overview of the pound to euro rate. I imagine you've had a busy day with the European Central Bank raising interest rates again. So what's affecting the pound to euro rate at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had the ECB hiking their interest rates today by 25 basis points, which has had a slight impact in actually strengthening the pound up. I think some major analysts were predicting potentially that the ECB could hike by 50 basis points. It's a slightly more moderate hike from them. We've also got the Bank of England making their next interest rate decision next Thursday as well. So we're expecting to see more volatility this month. It has been, I suppose, relatively flat over the past month or so in terms of movements between the pound and the euro. But these major decisions by the central banks are really what would impact the currencies quite dramatically. I'll have a lot of my clients who I'm speaking with who'll be deciding whether to take risk off the table before these decisions are due, whether that's with locking a forward contract or simply booking their currency before these decisions. Or you may have clients who want to accept that risk and potentially look at gambling a bit and booking their currency actually after these decisions. So these are often quite seismic events in the markets. After the ECB today, we haven't seen, as I say, a massive amount of movement. Looking at the chart now, and it's actually only moved by about 0.3% off the back of that, so not too dramatic. but it's probably all eyes to next Thursday now with the Bank of England decision.
Okay, just going back a bit for people who just don't really know the first thing about currency. You'll see a headline rate on the news, say it's about 1.16 today, or whatever it was. You're not going to get that if you're buying as a normal person, though, aren't you? Any more than with your holiday cash. So how does that work?
That's correct. Yeah. So I generally say to my clients, you've got three main rates you want to sort of take into account when you're starting this process. So yeah, you're right that the first one, that the big one, is sort of the headline rate you'll see when you look on Google. So we often, in the industry, we often call that the interbank rate or the mid-market rate. It's basically defined by where the major banks are doing trillions between themselves at a time. So that's what sets where the headline rate is. You've then got the tourist rate, which is what most sort of banks or post offices will offer. So that's going to be several percentage points away from the actual market. So today you might be looking at maybe sort of 112, 113 if you're lucky. And then we as a company will aim to get you a commercial rate, which is going to be somewhere in the middle. So the aim of our service is to, of course, obtain clients a better rate than what they'll be able to get through a high street bank. And again, that can save you quite a bit of money when you're talking about a large volume exchange as you will be doing for a property purchase.
Yep, and I guess that even if you can find a bank open, you're probably not going to get the same kind of expertise that you would get from Smart. Is that the real benefit of using an exchange like you?
Yeah, so I would argue there's two main benefits. The first one is what we've already discussed, is in the exchange rate. So you're going to be able to get a better exchange rate using a foreign exchange broker than you would just a high street bank. And the second one, as you mentioned there, is in the actual level of service you'll get. So with us, you get a dedicated account manager. We're open 8 till 6 Monday to Friday, and you'll find it much easier to get through to us on a telephone call than you would a bank. You might be sat on hold for an hour before you actually get through to a human at a bank. With us, you've got an account manager's direct line. You can call them straight away. And also, of course, with that account manager, you're going to get a sort of devised currency plan to help manage, the risk that you will be exposed to, and always hopefully presented with an option that seems as well best to you for your upcoming, currency requirements. So those, I would argue, are the two main benefits of using a service like ours rather than the bank.
Okay, so you mentioned a few different options. So can you explain firstly how the process of buying the overseas property works? Obviously, we're not taking a suitcase of cash with us. So am I transferring the money to you, or how does that work?
So in terms of sort of how we tend to operate, we're often actually transferring funds straight to solicitors in the property purchase process. So that's, whether that's for the deposit payment and then the balance, quite often your solicitor or whoever's dealing with the sale will provide you with their bank details. Might even be straight to the seller's account in some instances, but quite often it's going to the solicitor's account. So quite often we'll be sending the funds straight there. So whether you've booked your balance payment on a spot contract or a forward contract, you would be sent through a link whereby you can fill in the bank details of where those need to go. And then it's just a case of you transferring the sterling to us. Upon receipt of that, we can then send the euros straight over for you. If you want us to hold them on file as well, we can do that as well. So say if you've got the full funds available, you want to take advantage of a rate that's become available 2 or 3 weeks before your completion, you can book your currency with us. We can then hold the euros on file for you until your actual completion is occurring. And then it's just a case of us sending the funds straight to your solicitor's bank account upon that date. And we can do that, within 24 hours. It's just a case of you getting on the phone to us or, emailing your account manager to get that actioned.
Okay. And how do we know, just to be completely suspicious, how do we know that our money is safe with you?
Yeah, so that's, of course, a question I get a lot. Essentially, we're fully authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK. So the main sort of thing we have to abide by with that is the use of segregated clients accounts. So your funds are actually never held with us when you utilize us. They are held in totally segregated client accounts. So those accounts are fully 100% insured and ring-fenced and protected by the FCA. Clients can see our FCA number and all of our email signatures when corresponding with us. So it's very, very easy to look us up on that and ratify that. So essentially what that also means is that, say if the worst were to happen to us while we're holding on to client funds and we went under, anything like that, all of your money does get returned to you as part of FCA regulations, as it's being held in that fully ring-fenced account. So essentially, your funds of the client do remain protected at all times.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a forward contract a couple of times. I understand a spot contract, that's just where I transfer the money on the day. So tell me about the forward contract.
Yeah, so the forward contract is probably the most popular product we have at Smart. I'd say sort of around 70% of my clients end up going down this route. Essentially, what it allows you to do is lock in the exchange rate. Now, you can actually do this at any point for any time up to a year, but I would say most of my clients like to do this at the point of having an offer accepts on the property, because then you're essentially in a position where you have a fixed sort of price in euros, but you're currently holding pounds. So of course, the cost to you in pounds is constantly fluctuating based on where the exchange rate moves. Now, I mentioned this when giving the introduction, but if you just use the past 3 months as an example, that's 3% worth of movement. So £200,000 budget, that could be a £6,000. £6,000 worth of extra costs to you just off the back of an exchange rate movement. Often phrase it to clients where you probably wouldn't want to buy a property in the UK without knowing the cost in pounds. That would be one of the first things you'd actually want to know up front. But the reality is, when buying a property over in Spain, you just don't know what that final cost in pounds is going to be until you lock in the exchange rate. So that's the reason I think why the forward contract is so popular, is it allows you to bring power back into your hands. You can then focus on the other complexity of the process, property purchase process, like speaking to the lawyers, dealing with the counterparty, and dealing with all the legalities, and not having the currency risk as an added element to deal with in that process. So I think that's why the forward contract is so popular, and that's, as I say, a lot of my clients end up going down when buying a property with their currency requirement.
Okay, just one more question before we move on. What happens if I have I've accepted, my offer's been accepted, I have booked a forward contract with you, and then the sale falls through? What am I? I might have even sent a deposit to you. So what happens under those circumstances?
Yeah, it's something that does happen. I actually had a client today who essentially had this happen to him. I generally tend to say to clients, you have 3 options there. So option A, if you have the funds to do so in pounds, it's simply complete the contract by your value date. So you can complete the contract. We can then hold the euros on file for you beyond that date, more or less indefinitely, give you that time to sort of find a property, or maybe you open up a new euro account and we can just transfer the euros across to you there, and then you have full autonomy over those funds. So that's option A, is just to complete it, send in the sterling, we can hold the euros for you, no problem. Option B, you can also extend the contract, give yourself a new value date, so we can extend it forward by however long you need, and give you a new value date. There may have to be an adjustment in the rate when we do that, but it does depend on the pairing and the length of time. Option C as well, you can cancel it, so you can cancel the contract altogether, and that's an option as well. And then again, that would be a case of you discussing with your client what the rate is at the time of doing that. But there are certainly options available to you if that scenario unfolds, where you have a forward contract in place and the sale falls through.
Okay, great. So I've spoken to Danny. He's my account manager. I've worked out my budget, and now I'm going to start looking at properties in Spain. So, David, how's the market doing at the moment? Are you busy?
Yeah, no, it's very busy at the moment. I mean, we're suffering from the problem of not enough properties for sale on the market, and consequently, it's driving the local prices up, because certain areas that are very popular, the rates are increasing dramatically over the last year. But yes, no, we've got a lot of people looking for properties over here at the moment, Chris.
And is that mainly holiday home buyers, or are the retirees coming back? Not they ever went away, but
yeah, it's a bit of a mix. I mean, we're seeing still a lot of non-lucrative visa retirees coming, and as Emma mentioned before, a lot of people suddenly with Irish passports, having managed to come through the system, are coming across and making use of that, so they don't have the 180-day rule. But there are still plenty of investors, people who are wanting properties either as holiday homes or to rent as well. But the rental market's becoming more difficult. A lot of communities now have the power to say, we don't want anybody renting apart from ones already have the power to do so. in our community anymore, and it's becoming an issue locally.
Okay, and you're based in the Costa Blanca.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of properties are you finding that you're selling most of at the moment? Are people going for villas or country homes, or is it apartments?
Country homes are very much the smallest number of properties that we are inquired about, because most people want to be by the sea. So we're seeing semi-detached, detached villas, usually in the resale market, because the challenge with the new build villas is that there are 18 months, 2 years wait before you can actually get possession or get into your villa, because all the key ready ones that were available when we came out of the COVID lockdown have all been sold. So, people are not prepared. They've now made the decision. They're going to make the investment. They're going to buy or move or whatever. And they can't find what they're looking for. So it's very frustrating. A lot of people are coming back up to Costa Blanca, having looked at the Costa del Sol region, and just found that market is just too expensive for them down there. So they're coming back up north, which is also adding to our congestion.
Okay. So just we've talked about the organising a budget, setting a budget rather with Danny as regards your currency, your exchange rate. But how about when you're if I've got 200,000 whatever to spend, how much should I be budgeting for buying costs first of all?
Well, the Costa Blanca, the Alicante region has this 10% tax, which is the largest lion's share. So we normally say to clients, if you've got a budget of £200,000 sterling, just convert that straight to euros and say we're looking for a property of 200,000 euros. Then the currency exchange difference, whether it's 12 or more percent at the moment, will cover all your costs easily. So we generally say keep 12% extra for costs. But if you're talking about the Murcia region, then of course, it's a lower tax. It's 8% there. So then you need to keep slightly less costs in hand for that.
Okay, well, that's nice and simple. So at what point should someone be contacting you if we want to come on a viewing trip, maybe in the next month or two? How far in advance should we be contacting you?
Well, I mean, that's the challenge at the moment, Chris, is that all the agencies are very busy with clients who have booked months ahead to come out for a week's viewing trip. Because as we said earlier, it's not just about popping around and seeing a couple of dozen houses and taking your pick. It's more about finding the right area. So, we're driving thousands of kilometers in the week, showing clients different areas that we feel are suitable for them, based upon what we know. And once we found the area, then we start looking at the properties. But to do these things, we really need to get to know the client and understand what their lifestyle is like and what they're looking for in for a way of living. So we always try and encourage people to come to us 18 months before they thinking about actually coming across and buying a property. But that's for people who want to move across here and live, because that's a big step. For people who are looking for investment, that's a different story, of course.
Okay. So thinking about, can you take me through the basics of the buying process as it relates to you? So we would come out and assume, once we've looked at properties online and we've presumably whittled our choices down, we come out to you. What paperwork do we need to bring with us?
Well, if you're coming out to have a look around, you really just need to come with your passport.
Let's focus on people who are ready to buy.
Okay, well, if you're coming to buy, you really just need your passport. I mean, as Emma will tell us, once you've got your passport, the solicitors can organise all the documentation that you need. Your foreigner's identification number, your power of attorney if necessary, everything else that you need. But for us, your passport's all you need to come with. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And how about, so if we find that property that we like, could you take us through the process of making an offer?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we always like to try and help the clients with the negotiations of the purchase of the property, because we have a better idea of what the real value of that property on the market is. Because I'm always terrified that clients come out and they say, oh, but that's under our budget. Meanwhile, it's actually overpriced in the market. So, we have to try and make sure that they're paying the real value of the real market value of the property at the time. So if the client says, yes, we like that property, the first thing they need to do is to reserve it is pay us a deposit to take it off the market. And that will prevent anybody else being able to view it or to make an offer on it. So we don't have this gazumping over here if we do it correctly, because once the deposit has been paid and a reservation contract has been signed, then that property is off the market in theory. Then the process we always like to do is to make sure that the client has already their foreign exchange currency sorted out, a solicitor already sorted out. So Emma's seen them already and been through all the documentation that they need to have. So when they make the deposit, that the deposit money doesn't go directly to the person who's selling the property, whether it's an agent or whoever. It goes through the solicitor so that it's secure and the reservation document has been checked out, that it's correctly worded and there's no discrepancies in it from what we like to see. Then after the property is reserved, then the solicitors will do a check on the cadastral system and do the normal investigations. And then a date will be set between the buyer and the seller of when the completion will be. Obviously, if there's challenges in deeds and things like that, then the completion can be protracted. I mean, we've had a situation where the property was sold and the lady who owned it had moved back to her country of birth, but her husband, who had been dead for 10 years, was still on the deeds. So that one took over a year to resolve the deeds before the buyer could actually get possession of the property. We managed to negotiate a way around it by having a kind of a rental agreement up until the deeds had been sorted, so that they could at least have possession of the property, reasonably soon.
Okay, great. So just to go back to Danny just for a second. So for paying this reservation deposit, which could be several thousand, can you help with that? So I don't want to pay a tourist rate for it. So can you help with that reservation deposit?
Well, we don't. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. We're coming up to speed there.
Yeah.
So I was just saying no. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So by that time you should hopefully be set up with us and have your account managers direct dial. Literally, as I say, on spot contracts, 5-10 minute call to an account manager to get that booked in, and we'd get that turned over in 24 hours. So very easy to get that set up. And as you said, Chris, you definitely want to be using us for that as well, because even on those smaller ones, 2-3% different the exchange rate compared to using a bank can easily save you, couple hundred quid. So it's definitely worth doing. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Sorry, David, you were saying.
No, sorry. I was always going to say I always encourage the clients to do it through the foreign exchange guys directly to their solicitor. I don't want to see clients getting out wads of cash or handing over credit cards to other agents. We don't take deposits. We make it we say to our clients, rather it goes to a client account at a solicitor's. It's nice and safe and preferably coming through Danny and his team.
Right. Okay. So thinking more generally, what advice would you give for people coming out to look at properties in Spain?
The biggest misnomer I think that we encounter every day is that people have in their minds an idea of what kind of property they want, and they choose locations, and people always say, well, we don't really know where we want to be. That's not the issue. Don't worry about not knowing the areas and the locations in Spain. through our contacts and talking to the clients, we'll soon realize what they're looking for, what kind of lifestyle they have or they want to have, and we'll make sure that they, we show them areas that will suit them. So that's the big worry that I think most people have. But it shouldn't be a worry. It's more about, what do you really want to do as you retire here or as you holiday here? That's the important part.
Okay, and just before we move on to Emma, can I ask you, are there any places where you would advise buyers to look at that sort of undiscovered areas that you would recommend?
There are a lot of pueblos, Spanish little villages that are 20 minutes inland from the coast, and a lot of them don't look tremendous. They've got the typical new modern Spanish concrete sort of look, but they've got gorgeous squares and great facilities. But the benefits and the savings you can make in having a townhouse or a property in those places, for me, far outweighs the extra cost at the coast. So that would be my advice.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I'm 20 minutes from the sea myself, not in Spain, but I have to say it's close enough. We were in the car, we're there in 10 minutes, and why would you don't get the sea view, but then you're paying much less. Okay, great. We have got some questions coming in, which I think we'll leave until the end, unless one comes in that's particularly relevant. So, Emma, how long is a piece of string? But how long can the process take from booking my trip from finding that property to actually moving in?
Well, from the actual buying process itself, it could be completed in as little as a month and a half, 2 months. It could be longer. It all depends on what the owner of the property and the buyer want to do. Because if you need more time, or if they need more time, then you can agree that between you so that you have an appropriate date. But really, you could be looking at a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay. Now, Peter has asked, how long normally from deposit to completion? Is there an exchange of contracts as in the UK? But perhaps you should just go back and explain the process of exchange of contracts. And
okay, well, this is sort of touching already on what David has said, but just sort of in a nutshell, you're looking at typically a 3-stage process. The first part of that is the reservation, and that is paying a small deposit, typically about €3,000, can be depending on the autonomous region. I mean, in Costa del Sol, it tends to be 6,000 as a basis, but it's a signal basically showing that you've made an offer, it's been accepted, and that you are engaged with the intention of going forward with the purchase, so they can't continue marketing the property or engage with somebody else for the sale. Then over that next week or so, you would be moving towards the private purchase contract, the deposit contract that they add us. They're all basically the same thing. And this is a really important contract because that is the one that's binding to notary and has all the conditions for the sale. So during this time, your solicitors would be looking at all of the registry information, the owner's information, liaising with the town hall to make sure there's no infractions, there's no debts against the property, and also gaining as much paperwork for the property itself to make sure that everything is in order. Anything that isn't provided or is still pending, then we would write into that private purchase contract to make sure that it has to be provided before signing, giving the person an out of the contract if there was an issue there. This is really important because typically you would pay 10% of the purchase price when you sign this contract. This is the whole reason that you don't have the gazumping issue as you have in the UK, is because these sales are formalized with deposits and with contracts. It's not all done at the end with the exchange. The final part of that, which would be exposed to the exchange, is signing at the notary, which we either do in person or we can arrange by power of attorney for you. And this is the point that is signed before the notary. Taxes are paid following. And then we would inscribe the deed would be notarized and then inscribed at property registry.
okay, thank you. And because we're a global brand these days, how is it very different if you're buying from the States, the United States?
No, No, the buying process doesn't change where you're from or whether you're resident or non-resident. The buying process is exactly the same. The only things that can cause delays is if there's more time to arrange power of attorney, for example. We always set up a bank account for clients locally to where they're going to be, having a bank account. Our preference, and this is sort of contradictory for what other people have said, is that our preference is that monies then get sent for the final deposit to their own account, so that it's not a case of us holding all of your money. It's actually in your own account for the last payment. And transfers are controlled through contracts as well. Those are the things that can usually cause a little bit of delays, but apart from that, the process is exactly the same.
Okay. And when should we be in touch with you? Presumably, it's not when we've got a piece of paper to sign thrust in front of us.
We have exactly that. I mean, the amount of times that somebody will approach us and it's like, well, I'm here and I've already paid my deposit. What's next? And that's fine. We will jump straight in. We do, as I say, actually cover the whole of Spain. So we know the differences between the different autonomous regions. So we are able to help anyone. It's better if we do it before. Because you have more time to get everything prepared. Things like NIE numbers, for example, and the NIE number is kind of your tax identification number, national insurance number in Spain, and it needs to be for each person that is going to be signing the deed. It's something that is needed only for the final signing, but getting hold of them, depending on the time of year, can be a bit difficult getting appointments. So it's nice to get some of those things sorted out earlier if possible, although there are contingencies in place if needs be. So it's not something that's going to stop people being able to buy.
Okay. So I guess also it depends on your circumstances. So, for example, if you're buying as a married couple, is it maybe different to buying as an unmarried couple? I guess you might need to know these things before you. Doesn't it make any difference?
Yeah, this is it again. I mean, it really depends on yourselves. Well, we talk to some people as far in advance as a year and a half before they're planning to actually purchase the property. We prefer to speak to people earlier, purely because it gives you a chance to really put your timeline together and make sure that you've got everything ready for what you need. Buying as a couple makes no difference whether you're married or unmarried. The only differences that would be applied in those cases is if you were selling the property. At that point, there can be differences, or if there's an inheritance with the property, there can be differences, but buying is not.
Okay. Peter has asked a good question. He's asked, are the solicitor's searches similar to those in the UK? For example, checks on local planning issues.
No, they're quite different here. And it's not like a searches pack or anything like that. We actually individually contact different bodies and investigate the property individually. I mean, from the local town hall, we can find out, for example, if there are any infractions against the property. From the community, we can check if there's any debts, obviously with utility and such. With the registry offices, there are two registry offices here in Spain, the main property registry and the cadastral registry. So we do check both of these to check the ownership, to check any encumbrances on the property, to make sure they're in the name of who is selling it, and also to make sure that the two registries actually match with each other. So if there's any discrepancies, that they can be dealt with before you go too far into the purchase.
Okay. On the subject of those kind of searches, I know British people like to get a survey done. I know it doesn't happen in every country. Is that a common thing that you find, David and Emma? And what would you advise someone who does want to get a property checked out?
Well, from ours, I'll just quickly and then leave David to add his to that. From our point of view, it's not that common that people ask for a survey. We don't have surveyors as such in the same way. You have architects that would do a report on the property, and a lot of the properties are already covered by building guarantees and such, and all of the paperwork that is provided as part of the sale show that it's habitable and that everything is actually in order. But it's never a problem if somebody does want to pay for a property survey. We can engage that and actually write it into the contract that it's subject to the survey and make those arrangements so that they can do that. So this is not a problem at all. In some cases, if you've got an older property that you've got a lot of questions about, then it could be a very good idea to do it.
Okay. Well, I suppose that begs the question: what does tend to be a problem? What are the kind of issues that can complicate a property buying process? Is it for I seem to recall in the dim and distant past that there are some problems if you're buying land, that you might have to ask the neighbouring farmer if you're buying a farmhouse, that kind of issue. Are there any problems, any particular kind of properties that are more of an issue?
Well, these are the checks that we do as a standard, no matter what property that you purchase. We're always going to look at exactly what type of land it's built on, etc. If you're looking at something that's built on more rustic land, then obviously there's more of a possibility of some of these issues, and we will find those out straight away. I mean, for example, you could be buying an older property and have plans to add an extension to it, this, that, and the other. If you can let us know or make sure that we're aware when you're looking at a property, if you've got those kind of plans, then we can make sure that it is actually possible to do that beforehand, because each property has got certain regulations about how much square meterage can be built on it and what type of construction can be made. So if you've got those sort of plans, we can check that out again before you go too far down the road. There's no need to be caught in some of these horror stories as they were so many years ago that we all heard about.
Okay, so can I ask that sort of general question of you again, of you too? What sort of general advice would you give people coming out to buy a property for the first time? They're a little bit nervous, never done it before. They got their life savings in the bank, itching to start that new life in Spain. Any sort of general advice to them?
We would just always recommend that you speak to an independent lawyer and make sure that you understand everything beforehand. We can check anything before you sign it, before you make payments, and alleviate any concerns that you might have. The important thing, as David has said, is finding the right property for you, because everybody's different about which area suits them, which type of property suits them, and you've got to find the right one for you. It's just when you do find it, put the brakes on a little bit. Just make sure that you don't jump into anything and sign anything and pay without having a good look at everything first of all. And in the majority of cases, in 99% of the cases, there's not going to be a problem, and everything can go through exactly as you want. And if there is any issue, the whole point of using solicitors like ours is that you're able to terminate the sale, get your money back, and then you can start and look again for the next property.
Okay. In our recent survey, which we got thousands of responses, so thank you to all those people who responded to that. We did ask the question of those who'd already bought: how did you find the buying process? Was it easier than you expected, okay, very difficult, or quite difficult? And I think 95% said it was either much easier than they expected or just easy. So people shouldn't be worried about buying in Spain, should they?
Not at all. And as I say, if you've got all the right help, all the right assistance, and it's explained to you, then there's no reason that you can't have all responses easy and not difficult at all.
Okay. Now, we need to talk mortgages. How easy is it to get a mortgage in Spain at the moment? I don't know if, who might. It's a general question. Anyone know if we're looking to get a bit of a mortgage, bit of extra cash to buy? David, what's the mortgage situation?
It's not very good at the moment. I mean, because the interest rates have gone up. We had a independent guy who used to help us or help clients to see if they were eligible for mortgages, Spanish mortgages, and he's actually stopped doing it because he's found so few people that come to him are legible to get mortgages that he can't do it anymore. So we're recommending to a lot of our British clients, please try and see if you can get a mortgage in principle from the UK rather, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to do it from here. You're going to need a huge deposit.
Right. Yes, and I guess right. Because also you can't put the buying costs onto the mortgage, can you?
No.
So you've already got 30% that you have to pay in cash. Then you've got to add the buying cost. So you've got to find 40% anyway.
Yes, that's right. I mean, you're going to need at least 40% to even get a look in these days. So it's very challenging, actually. We lost a sale last week because of this issue. Exactly. Yeah.
But people can get mortgages at home, and then obviously, or equity release, or one of those kind of lifetime mortgage here perhaps might be a better option.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the terms are not bad. I mean, we're seeing a lot of clients, in their 50s, still being offered 25-year options. So, yeah, I mean, the money's there. You've just got to have a big deposit.
Okay. Another question, which I'm worried will be a slightly negative answer. People are looking to rent out the property. People are thinking, oh, well, I'll be there for 20 weeks a year and I'll rent it out the other 20. Is that still a viable option with the clampdowns on Airbnb, etc.?
It's becoming more challenging. Let's just say that it's still viable. I mean, I saw a report last month from the Valencian region saying that people who have bought investment properties and are renting them out are still making between 8 and 10% return. That's obviously including the increased value of the property every year. But it is becoming more challenging, Chris. Yeah, definitely.
But I guess the restrictions are mainly on they're mainly on short-term lets. So if you wanted to do a long-term let, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm only talking about short term. If you want to do long term lets, it's open arms. It's even the golf courses will let you do long term lets. So that's a different story altogether. Long term lets are easy.
Okay, just sort of opening it out again. Can you give us an idea of the kind of budget we need to be looking for those kind of because you can always find a property for 15,000 euros somewhere. It'll be in a slum, but what is a realistic property for the kind a realistic budget for the kind of property that we might like to buy? Let's think about a 2-bedroom apartment.
Well, if you're looking for a 2-bedroom apartment that's somewhere along the coast, even if it hasn't got sea views, realistically, for something that you can swing a cat in, you're going to need 110, 120,000 euros. Then you'll have something that's very livable. If you go inland, 120,000 euros can get you a finca with 10,000 square meters, but that's a different animal.
Okay, and so how about for the classic sort of villa with the pool, 3 bedrooms, maybe not a sea view, but within a short bus ride of the sea?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lovely area near us called just between Torrevieja and Guatemala, slightly inland, about 5 minutes from the sea, El Raso, and it's a perfect, ideal type of villa that people are talking about. A decent sized plot. You've got a good garden. You can always have a pool put in. Most of them have pools. 3-bedroom villa. You're talking around 240,000 euros.
Okay.
It's not too bad, but it's obviously a lot more than it was a couple of years ago.
Yes, absolutely. Thinking about the, we always get a question on the legal costs, Emma. I know we've touched on buying costs, but could you give us a rundown of how the different costs work? So some will be for a notary. I mean, is that an expensive sort of charge? Can you sort of break down those costs for us?
What you're looking
at the fact that it's different regions.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, when you're buying, if you're not buying with a Spanish mortgage, because there's differences if you are purchasing with a Spanish mortgage, it then also depends if you're purchasing a resale property or an off-plan property, because the taxation is different. The resale properties is obviously the most common, and if you're looking at that then varies again by autonomous region. So if we're looking at the Costa Blanca, 10%, Alicante region, Murcia 8%, Andalusia 7%, Barcelona, Catalonia, that tends to be 10% unless you go over a certain amount, and Mallorca, all of them have got these different rates of percentage. You've got that is based on the purchase price itself, and then notary and registry fees, and that is again based on what the property price is. So if you had something that was being purchased maybe for 150,000 euros, you could look at notary fees of 1,000, notary and registry of 1,000 to 1,200. They're set by the notary and the registry office, based specifically on the property and the area. So our preference always, with as I said many times before, is to talk to the client specifically, because we can give a breakdown based exactly on what they're looking at. If they're buying off plan, then this 10% isn't applied. It's different. They have IVA and a new registration tax, so that varies quite a lot as well.
Okay, and then there'll be ongoing property taxes once you've bought. Can you tell me a bit about those?
Yeah. So first of all, you're going to have obviously your usual utilities. When we manage a purchase, once the deed has been signed and is registered, we then set them up as direct debits for all of the utilities from the client's own bank account and swap them over into their name, so everything's set up. One of those then also is the IBI or SUMA, depending on where you are in Spain. It is so the equivalent in the UK of council tax. Which is levied annually. Again, it depends on the property and the size, but it's considerably less than council tax. So it's not as much as you would expect to pay, but that's effectively what it is. You'll also have an annual rubbish collection tax, which is quite small, and then if you're purchasing as a non-resident, then there's a non-residence tax that you have to pay annually based just on the property itself. Again, it's not a huge tax. And that is something that needs to be presented at the end of each year. So those are the basis of the taxes. As a resident, it's like a wealth tax, effectively. As a resident, that gets incorporated into your income tax.
Okay, and Danny, managing those sorts of ongoing costs. Can you help with that? Is that something that Smart can help with?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have sort of two different ways you can deal with those ongoing costs, somewhat similar to the actual property purchase requirement. Is you can either set those payments up on a sort of flexi rate basis or on a fixed rate basis. So you can set up actually a forward contract as well for your living costs, so that you're sending us the same amount in pounds each month and we're sending the same amount in euros over. So you can have that fixed, or you can have it on a sort of flexi rate regular payment plan basis, so that you send us the sterling and then the amount you're receiving at the other end in euros is going to fluctuate each month based on where the rate goes. So that's really just dependent on your individual sort of needs and requirements, I suppose, as to whether you want that euro amount to be fixed or if you're happy for it to change each month based on where the rate's moving.
Okay. We've had a question from Gonzalo, who's asked, when a contract is cancelled, presumably because of a sale falling through, how much money's are taken off what comes back to you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, it's first important to say that forward contract cancellations are quite rare. We generally, as I said, when talking about the mechanics involved with forward contract cancellations, we do generally try and keep them in place, either by completion and us holding the euros or extending them. But if worse comes to worse and you do decide you want to cancel the contract, we can do that. It would involve us actually selling back the euros we'd forward purchase for you onto the market. So it's basically highly dependent on the rate at the time of the sellback as to whether you actually do owe any money or not. So it is sometimes, I've had it quite often where I've cancelled forward contracts and actually the clients, not had to ask any money. So it is very, very rare. And as I say, it's dependent on the rate at the time of the sellback. So it's hard to give a precise answer on exactly how much money is due, because it does vary. I would say if that's something you want to dig into more, then it's worth, giving us a call and we can give you some sort of specific examples of that.
Great. Okay. A question for David now. Planning permission. A lot of people come out with big plans, and they quite not unreasonably, because this is a big project. People dream about it forever, and they perhaps want that property, but they want a pool in it, or they want that property and they want to convert that outbuilding. Is that something that you're able to advise on, or but yeah, is that something you can help with, or should they be asking a specialist or a lawyer about those sorts of planning permissions?
We obviously, having been in the areas that we operate in for many years, we get to know what you can and cannot do in certain towns and locations and areas. If you go inland, as Emma will tell you, a lot of these rustic and rural locations, you can't put pools in the ground. You have to have an above ground swimming pool. So people think, oh, that's tremendous. We'll have a lovely, huge, 20 acres and we'll have a nice big pool, only to discover that you can't actually put a pool in. So, we've got to try and manage the expectations of customers up front so that they know the restrictions of the areas they're looking at before they, get to the stage where they'd like to make an offer. It's no good coming along then and saying, but you can't extend it or put a pool in. So, yeah, I mean, area to area varies a lot, Chris. It's quite incredible, actually.
Okay. Now, I've got building work going on in my house at the moment, and it was a bit of an effort to get a builder. What's the situation when you're coming to? I mean, assuming that you can get the planning permission, but lots of us want a bit of work done that's well within the planning rules. How easy is it to get your new home made how you want it, in terms of a little bit of building work, new floors, new kitchens and things? How's that all working out?
No, that's very, very easy. I mean, the standard thing that people want to do when they first move in is, apart from the general clean, is give it a good paint so that the perhaps Mediterranean colors that might have been on the wall before are taken back to a more neutral base, and then new bathrooms and kitchens, and that's like it is in the UK. That's very much the standard. People do that, but it's very easy to get people to do that locally in Spain. And of course, the difference in the labor costs is quite dramatic. It's so much cheaper to do it here.
Okay, fantastic. Now, Emma, we have to talk about post-Brexit situation. I know we don't often talk about Brexit, but people have got used to. Are people getting used to applying for visas?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has it sunk in that things have changed, and the 180-day rule isn't going away. So, I mean, people are actually contacting me specifically for visas rather than looking for the loophole, which was the usual question before. There is no loophole. You are either a tourist or you are a resident. You have to make that decision. I think people are starting to realise that now. There's a lot of different visa options. Everything is all very much dependent on what you're planning to do when you're in Spain, and so that's a conversation always to have with people. There's one thing I would say that I don't think people do realize is if they have a European passport, then yes, you can apply for a residency based on that, but it is still a residency application. It's much easier and has a lot of benefits and advantages to some of the other ones, but there is still an application that they need to go through. So it's good to have a chat if they've got any thoughts along those lines.
And how worried should we be about getting that visa? Is it a pretty straightforward process? A few forms filled in, a little bit of money paid. What does it cost? How long does it take, and how painful is it?
This is dependent on the visa that you're doing. But first of all, it's not something for people to worry about. I mean, Spain's not looking for reasons to not have people come over here. It's in Spain's benefit to have people coming over here. As long as you meet the requisites of the specific visa and all the paperwork is done correctly, there's no reason for them not to approve it. So it's not a case of, will I be approved if everything's right? Then you will be approved. It's just a case of making sure you've got it all together. Dealing with consulates as much of it is always complicated. There's a lot of documentation. It needs to be exactly right. Some of them it's time sensitive. Some of it needs to be legalized and sworn translations, depending on the type of visa and who's going to be applying. So from our point of view, we offer services to people so that we can work with them while they're collating the paperwork to make sure it is all in order, that it is correctly legalized, that it is translated where it needs to be. Within the correct dates that it needs to be, so that when you have your appointment in the consulate, literally everything is all correct and in order, and you don't have anything to worry about. And we're there on hand if there is any question about anything, that we can fix it for you and continue the application, so you don't have any worries. Most of the visas do need to be done from the country of origin, which is very important. There are a few that can be done from Spain, but when that is the case, you still have to have all of the right documentation for that specific visa, and you are bound by the 90 and 180 days before applying for it. So it's really important, again, to have all these things in mind before you just turn up, because what you don't want to do is be here, find that you're taking 3 months to get everything together, and now you've got to leave and you can't submit the paperwork.
Yeah. Okay. Anything to add, David? Would you suggest? I think I know what you're going to say. Would you suggest buying the property first and then applying, or or would you want to get all your visa and everything organised before you come out and view the property?
If people are wanting to come here and retire or wanting to move here, I'd really recommend that they get the visa and all that lined up first. Otherwise, you're trying to handle too many eggs. You know, you're trying to buy a property, you're trying to find a location, you're still worrying about your visa. There's a nice order to get things done in, and foreign exchange, visa, solicitor, then start. The house is the last thing. Buying the house is the easy bit. Well, I think so anyway.
I'm sure it is. Well, all the evidence is that it is. Okay, fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's watched, and thank you in particular to our property experts. Do sign up for our virtual show, which we have just announced. It's our big property show. It's all online, so you can do it in your pajamas. It's on Saturday, 11th of November. Don't worry, we'll be stopping for the 2-minute silence. But it's on Saturday, 11th of November. It's all online. Just register. We'll be sending you lots of information about it, and I'm sure everyone who's here on the call today will be there all day, and you can look at David's properties and you can ask Emma those important questions. What else do I need to add? Any housekeeping things? No, I think that's just about it. If you could leave us a review on Trustpilot, that would be excellent, just to get the word out that we can help you buy a property in Spain. So once again, thank you to Danny Cook from Smart, to David Bryant from Hot Properties Hispania, and from Emma Belgum from JLCA Lawyers. Good luck in your property hunt, and it's goodbye from me, Christopher, and I at your overseas home. Bye-bye.